Okay, so we have the time concept. Generally, always we have the time concept, weekdays, weekends, 2 hours, etc. However, Hopi language in Arizona, okay, traditional, they don't have equal term for general concept of clock time. Okay, we might think, oh, that is so weird, but no, okay, this is what the culture practices. Okay, they don't refer to any clock time. Okay, hence there were no term for weekdays or weekends. So, so in your opinion, how do they refer to time? Okay, if they don't have the concept of clock time, okay, if the culture do not refer to any clock time or the general concept of clock time. So if you Google it, okay, it was found that they use the reference or the time reference of sunset and sunrise. Okay, so it is interesting to see how different cultures um, uh, can influence different choice of words. Okay, right. Okay, so when we talk about language and culture, the most popular hypothesis is by Edward Sapir and also Benjamin Wolf. Okay, so always when we talk about language and culture, these two people they are always associated to this to language and culture. Okay, so Sapir-Whorf they have come up with a theory. Okay, with the hypothesis, and the hypothesis states that there are certain thoughts. Okay, there are certain thoughts of an individual in one language that cannot be understood by those who live in another language. Okay, I repeat, there are certain thoughts, okay, of an individual in one language that cannot be understood by those who live in another language. Let's take for example, Alia. For example, Alia speaks French. Maybe Hajar speaks Welsh, and maybe Shafika, okay, uh, speaks Tagalog. Okay, so according to this hypothesis, um, Alia, uh, um, because she only speaks French, she therefore cannot understand Welsh, which Hajar is speaking Welsh, or Hajar cannot comprehend or understand when Shafika speaks Tagalog. Okay, so this is uh, the fundamental concept of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. One language cannot be understood by those who live in another language. All right, so these two American linguistics are very well known American linguistics. If you still remember the Hopi language just now, okay, so they are very familiar with Hopi language. So hence some of the examples in their research mostly comes from this language, that is Hopi language. Okay, the fundamental concept in Sapir-Whorf hypothesis can be divided into two. The first one is linguistic relativity, and the second one is, there you go, linguistic determinism. All right. So let's go back to linguistic relativity. So this term is defined as when language structure plus or combined with a predetermined categories, if you still remember categories just now. So in linguistic relativity believes that it must have influence on how we perceive the world. So culture, it must have influence on how we perceive the world. As for the second principle in Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is linguistic determinism. So linguistic determinism is simply defined as language determines thought. Okay, so language here can be native language determines thought. Okay, so language may determine our thinking patterns and the way we view the world. Okay, So, for example, Arabic language has many words for different types of camels. Okay, but in Chinese or English language, there is only one word to refer to camel, that is just camel. But different to Arabic language, because they have so many types of different camels. They use it one for racing, one for traveling, one for food. Okay, so they have different type of camels, hence different words for camels in Arabic language. So this is an example of linguistic determinism. So 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 when we take a look at these principles of Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, um, the principle is often defined as having two versions, right? So take note of these versions because this Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is a very popular question in final exam. Okay, so strong version of this hypothesis. Okay, it says that language determines thought and that linguistic categories limit determine cognitive categories. So this is a strong version, and a weak version of this hypothesis. Linguistic categories usage influence thought and certain kinds of non-linguistic behavior. So you may need time to understand this. So what I would like to suggest and promote is that you guys please read the book. Okay, please read the book, chapter 20, language and culture, to help you understand more of these versions. Okay, the strong version and the weak version. Okay, so what is the hype behind this hypothesis? So what if language determines thought and that language categories limit determine cognitive categories? So how does it affect the speaker? Okay, and the weak version, how does it affect the speaker? Linguistic categories usage influence thought, okay, and certain kinds of non-linguistic behavior. So what is the hype? What is there any problem with this hypothesis? Why does it consist of two versions? Why did it have a strong version and weak version? And then it also has the different principles, linguistic determinism and linguistic relativity. So what's the importance? What is so popular about this Sapir-Whorf hypothesis? So so this this theory is popular, I think, in the middle of 20th century, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, yes, confirm. Middle of the 20th century. So it was familiar back then, and then over time, a lot of linguists review this hypothesis, and they have come up with certain or few questions. Okay, that is against the hypothesis itself. So the first statement that is against the hypothesis. If this theory is right, okay, the language determinism theory is accepted or is right, then the cross-language and cross-cultural communication will never occur. So, like I gave an example just now, so Alia can only speak in French, and Hajar can only communicate in Welsh, and also Shafika can only speak in Tagalog. So, they may not be able to understand each other, and then there will never be any sort of communication between these three people. So we are confined to our language spoken. Okay, and the next one is if this theory is right, okay, then translation toward foreign language is impossible. But however, it has been proven over the years that translation toward foreign language is possible. So one person is not constrained to only understanding one language due to its culture. No. Okay. So one of the most popular statement um, against this hypothesis, translation toward foreign language is impossible, which is not the case today. Okay, and the last one, if this theory is right, then foreign learning will never occur. So I might not be able to teach you English language if this theory is right, and we all of us in the first place can only speak Malay. Okay, so there's no so any of us uh, can speak English at all. So this theory seems to be quite rigid in a way. Okay, so that is why a lot of most recent or modern linguists, they believe that language determinism cannot be accepted, and um, highly um, uh, highly rejected by a lot of um, modern linguists. Okay, all right. I think that is all for today. I will continue with the rest of the subtopics in language and culture. We still have non-lexicalized categories, cognitive categories, classifiers, social categories, and also one of the one of the most important one is gender. Okay, gendered words. So last one but not least, our class on on Thursday will be at 5:30 p.m. So I will also announce this in the WhatsApp group. So thank you everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.